Hey everybody, so I have a fascinating guest on my show. His name is Juan Vera, and he's very interested in the intersection between philosophy and neuroscience and how we could optimize our brains in terms of performance. And he's also interested in helping people with ADHD to focus using a neurofeedback device. So welcome to the show, Juan.
Hey, what's up?
Juan, can you tell us about your interest in neuroscience and philosophy?
So you could say it started like way back about a year ago. To be fair, so I used to play soccer like a lot, and then I wanted to become like a better person, like a better player. And all of a sudden, I started shifting away from soccer because I actually got injured, and my it was a glute strain, right? I got injured, so I couldn't do much, right? And
Right.
I was like sitting around, I was like, oh damn, I can't do anything. What am I gonna do? And I started running, and then I also picked up philosophy as well. And I sort of like combined running and philosophy as a way. Like philosophy helped me improve my running in a way because it gave me like a good mentality for it.
Mm,
And ever since then, I also actually picked up a book called Endure, which talks about mindset and human performance and running specifically as well. So I sort of connected like all of them, right? How we can use philosophy and neuroscience to improve our not just running but also human performance overall. And
mhm.
that's something I'm really interested in.
What do you find through your own research? So when you're applying this philosophy on yourself in terms of running, how were you able to optimize your performance?
Let's say you're talking about the scientific sense. There's a ton of like neuroscience about it. In a way, you can also call it pseudoscience, where it's just based on like philosophy. Like it's a thing that
Hmm.
it's sort of like a mindset, right? An attitude that you have. But
Right.
I guess some scientific aspects that you have of how neuroscience can improve your running is there was a study done. I believe it was by I think it was Samuel Marcora. It was like a while back though.
Hmm.
But what something they found is they had runners run a marathon, and every now and then they would have participants, not participants. They had spectators like cheer them on and all of that, right? And
Hmm.
then based off that, the runner himself like ran faster.
Right. Yeah.
And that was also shown in cycling. They had a cycling test where they would flash like screens of happy faces, and they would do better. They would
Interesting.
in other studies they would flash pictures of sad faces, and they would do worse. And it's just like basic psychology like that that can affect like a runner and
Mm.
performance. And it's also like applicable and transferable to other areas of life as well, which is sort of cool.
Yeah. So can you tell us
Yeah.
about how it could be generalized to other areas?
In everyday life, right, you always face struggles and challenges. It's inevitable that you're gonna like face something that it's gonna be really difficult to go through. Small like tiny details in your day-to-day life, like in those transitions. Let's say you're coming home from school after a rough day, right?
Hmm.
And then you're feeling tired, you're feeling like crap, and you just don't want to do anything. You lay down in bed. What you could actually do instead is sort of like just literally just pick yourself up, like quite simply. Maybe take a shower, take a quick walk, and you're literally gonna be cheered out like immediately.
Yeah. There's little things that you could do that could jolt your mental state.
Right,
And I
right.
think that's really fascinating that just having that moral support from others could really go a long way too.
Yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
definitely. I definitely actually found that to be true, especially in the sport of running, where I used to train on my own, like for about 6 months actually, and it was fun on my own. I got to like sit down with my thoughts, and it was like peaceful because I would run for about maybe an hour and a half per day,
Mhm.
and I found it really nice, right? And then I started getting like more social with running itself, and I found that community is like a great way to just share like fun but challenging moments as well.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, sometimes we think that community could be just something that's a waste of time, but with that moral support, we could actually go a long way, kind of really fuels us up.
yeah, definitely. I guess it's also I don't know if you ever heard the saying, but I'm not sure if I'm saying it correctly word by word, but it goes along the lines of you become the average of the five people you hang around with. So
Right. Yeah.
if you're gonna have about like five people who just aren't, I guess, committed to being like a better person, then
Mhm.
you're probably chances are you probably might not be like that, right?
Yeah.
Now, there are exceptions, right? But you're more likely to be a better person if you hang around good people,
Right.
right?
Yeah, that's a really good point. So, can you tell us more about this connection between neuroscience and philosophy?
So I was actually exploring a lot about philosophy over the summer,
Hmm.
and I found this study done. It was linked to philosophy and neuroscience, but basically the gist of it was I believe it was the prefrontal cortex of your
Hmm.
brain
Right.
that when a person like starts seeking wisdom and becoming more enlightened, a part of their brain would actually like grow and expand. And
Wow.
it was
Yeah.
like, yeah. And it's basically it's like inherently linked. Like it's not just like a mental construct that you're performing with philosophy. Like it literally improves your brain's function.
That's really interesting. What are some ways that you could see people like apply that concept into their lives?
Well, I personally do actually. I definitely read a lot, but
Hmm.
I put like an emphasis on not just reading because I feel a bunch of people definitely get stuck on reading about philosophy, mindset, all of that way too much. And then the
Hmm.
issue with that is if they get stuck reading, they don't actually practically apply it, then they just can't do it, right? It doesn't
Hmm.
have any effect on them.
Right.
And that's something I've actually struggled with in the past. It's like, bro, I'm reading so much yet I feel like I feel like I'm not doing anything right with this knowledge. So I think
Mhm.
the perfect way to do it, something that I do is I literally open up a document. I don't know if you use Notion, but I open up a Notion page.
Mhm.
It's like a Google Docs. You just open up a blank document, and I literally write down like how am I going to implement this step by step, and I make it specific as well. And that's what helps me just implement it as in my life.
Hmm. And
Yeah.
what's something that you felt like you're able to implement?
There's this concept. I don't know if you heard of James P. Cars.
No, I haven't.
Okay, yeah, he wrote this book. It's called I believe the title is Infinite Games.
Hmm.
But the gist of it is basically there are two types of games in life. You either play an infinite game or a finite game. The
Hmm.
infinite game is the overarching game of life, right? And you
Hmm.
have finite games in life, like let's say like a soccer match, for instance, or listening to a song. That's a finite game.
Hmm.
And the key to it is that you actually don't want to get sucked into the finite game.
Hmm.
You want to always think about the infinite game, like what's your actual goal in life, and what game are you playing?
Right.
And then you play each single finite game that's geared towards your overarching goal of the infinite
Interesting.
game.
Yeah.
Right, right. And I found that to be quite like helpful in my life because it just helped me like hone in on what I really need to do and
Hmm.
ignore like I guess the excess noise.
Right. And
Yeah.
also like when you start to do anything with that mindset, you start to see it as an opportunity. So it's never a waste of time. You're always trying to find some way to improve your infinite game. Like how can I use what I'm learning right now to improve what I want to do in the future?
Yeah. And yeah, I that's a good point because the thing about life is that like no matter what path you take, there's always a learning route. And as
Hmm.
long as you choose to learn from your mistakes, then you will like
Yes.
eventually end up succeeding. But the key thing is to make sure to apply like the lessons you learn because while people can learn, they don't apply it, and that's like what
Yeah.
doesn't lead to progress.
Yeah, you really need to really put it into practice. So, can you tell us
Yeah,
about this thing that you are creating? So, you want to be able to help people with ADHD to focus. So, what are you doing in that regards?
yeah. So I was exploring neurofeedback, and I was really interested by there was this study done by this NASA scientist. It was way back. I want to say like maybe 26 years ago, 1997. I'm fairly certain. And he found that there is this tiny EEG index. I guess to elaborate, EEG and an EEG index is so your brain can it spouts out brain waves, alpha, theta, beta, delta, gamma,
Hmm.
and you can form an equation based on those brain waves that can be recorded to
Mm.
track a certain brain state. He found like a specific equation that can track engagement for a human being. So
Mm.
all you have to do is plant like some tiny wires onto your head, on your scalp, and
Mm.
they'll be able to track those brain waves to track if they're focused. And I found that was really cool, right? So I started thinking, and there are companies that also do this as well, but none of them are geared towards the problem I'm trying to solve. So
Hmm.
if you just pack a system like that, a system that can track your focus into a tiny device,
Right.
what you can do is sort of like track when you're focused and when you're unfocused. Now the problem I found was that ADHD students, I forget the exact number. I believe it was a bit more than half, I believe, but more than half of ADHD students who dropped out due to the fact that they couldn't like be attentive in class, and because of that, their grades were failing, and they dropped out. Right.
Right. Yeah.
So I figured I could pack like that tiny system that helped track your focus and improve your focus into a small device you can just put on your head. Perhaps one day, like the dropout rate will decrease, and more people will be able to fulfill their dreams of completing education and getting a job they want.
Yeah, that's really fascinating how you're doing this.
Eventually, what I want to do as I continue researching on how to build this thing, um, I was thinking once I gain more knowledge of the hardware itself, I'm thinking of putting on binaural beats onto the device. And as it tracks your focus, the binaural beats would guide you into a focused state. And it's been shown that binaural beats, like depending on the frequency of the sound itself, can guide you into different brain states. There's a binaural beats geared for meditation, for sleep, and for focus too. So it's pretty cool. And there's a
Hmm.
bunch of companies that do it. You can also find YouTube videos as well. You'll literally find YouTube videos like binaural beats for studying, and
Yeah.
boom, yeah,
Mhm. It's definitely very helpful for people with ADHD. And the thing is, people with ADHD, they like to be able to engage more of the senses. So like when you make it something that's very visual, like you're graphing it, graphing out their waves, and also you're employing this binaural beats, I think that's something that they could relate to.
yeah. I think it can definitely help, especially because I'm guessing it immerses them more, and that's what I'm thinking.
That's
It's
right. Yeah.
definitely helps because I guess the more engaged you are, like if you're bored, it's gonna be difficult to stay focused. And with with ADHD, I'm thinking it's probably a bit worse. So binaural beats is something that actively engages with the user. So it's definitely a good idea.
Excellent. And
Yeah.
so one more question for you. So what is your infinite game?
Well, that's a good question. That's a tough one. That's actually something I've been considering for a while. I think I've narrowed it down to it's a pretty concise but pretty cool philosophy behind it. I sort of want to like I guess be the best person I can be, and I guess that comes like philosophically, like in the mindset sense, and also I guess physically. Like I like running, so I like being active, I like being fit, I like performing well as an athlete,
Mhm.
and I also want to be like a great person in the sense where I guess in the field of whatever I'm diving into. Like right now, I'm diving into technology of well, that little device I'm making, right, with
Right.
neurofeedback.
Mhm.
I want to dive into technology and become like a really like technical person with that technology so I can create cool devices that can help people.
Hmm.
I'd like to become like great in all those fields, I guess. And then on the concept of becoming like a great person, like it's not, I wouldn't say it's only for me itself, it's to help others as well.
Hmm.
And so I guess to sum it all up, I guess becoming a better version of myself, but helping others with that.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a really, I really like how you put it. So the primary focus is you're working on yourself and you want to genuinely give something that's meaningful to the world and
Yeah.
bringing something that's very positive.
Right. That's basically it. You got
Mhm.
it spot on.
Juan, thank you so much for being on this show.
Yep, no problem.
Mhm.
You guys can check out my LinkedIn. I believe it's VXNUAJ. And I
Mhm.
also have a newsletter.
Mhm.
It's under the same name, VXNUAJ. So just make sure to check me out.
Mhm. I'll
And
put the
yeah,
links to Juan's work down below in the description box.
thank you for having me, Leon.